As you all know, when we formed the Counterterrorism Caucus, one of our main concerns here in the state of Oklahoma is the Muslim Brotherhood organization operating here and some of their front organizations. We asked a great gentleman and patriot himself to come out, Mr. Frank Gaffney, and I'd like to welcome him here today and thank him for coming and speaking to us. Mr. Gaffney has a huge resume, and I couldn't possibly hit on all of it today, but I would like to hit a few key points. Just some of his accomplishments. He was the former Secretary of Defense in the Reagan administration. He is the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. It's a Washington-based nonprofit educational organization. And he also has his own nationally syndicated radio show called Secure Freedom.
I want to say how really privileged I am to be here in the company of some of the people who are responsible for fighting the fight that I believe all Americans need to be aware is underway and to become engaged in as well. And that is a fight against a doctrine that is our generation's most serious and, I believe, potentially mortal peril. The adherents to it call it Sharia. We have had the state legislature of Oklahoma in just the past few days adopt a tremendously important piece of legislation aimed at helping to counter this phenomenon of Sharia, but more importantly, of any foreign law that would have the effect of denying Americans in this state their constitutional rights or otherwise be contrary to state public policy. And I want to particularly thank Sally Kern, who has done yeoman's work getting this piece of legislation enacted in both the House and Senate here and now sent to the governor for her signature. I'm very pleased we had a few minutes this morning with the governor to talk about the importance of her signing this bill, made all the more important, I would argue, because of the pressure she's now coming under from some of those who do adhere to Sharia. Indeed, some who are directly linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization that is very much about imposing this doctrine despite its repressiveness, despite its hostility to women and homosexuals and Jews and apostates and songwriters and all manner of other people. They're trying to impose it here in this country. One of the organizations that is being heard from at this moment, arguing that the governor must not sign the bill, is a group associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. It's known as the Council on American-Islamic Relations. As it happens, they're having their 7th annual dinner here in Oklahoma City tomorrow night. And I hope it's a vehicle, this event and the controversy that is now being stirred up by it, for some careful examination of who the Council on American Relations, or CARE as they call themselves, actually are. And let me just give you a couple of facts. This is an organization that was started by a group identified by the Muslim Brotherhood itself, the Islamic Association of Palestine, back in 1991 as a Muslim Brotherhood front organization. In 1993, they stood this group up, CARE, to become an organization that would do fundraising and political warfare on behalf of a group known as Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. These are facts that have been introduced into evidence and affirmed by not one, not two, not three, but 4 federal judges in the course of the Holy Land Foundation trial and an appeal thereto. Anyone who considers the Council on American-Islamic Relations what it professes to be, just a civil rights organization speaking for the Muslims of the United States, and not as a Muslim Brotherhood front engaged in influence operations and, frankly, subversion in our country, is grossly mistaken and is, I'm afraid, unwittingly perhaps, but nonetheless, aiding and abetting those engaged in what the Muslim Brotherhood itself calls civilization jihad against the United States. So the American Laws for American Courts legislation, which would keep foreign laws like Sharia, but not exclusively Sharia, from being used to the detriment of women and children and others whose rights are not respected by Sharia, from having their constitutional freedoms restricted or undermined. I think it's time for us to get this legislation done here in Oklahoma, as it has been done now in 4 other states, enacted into law, never challenged once, by the way, on constitutional grounds in court. This is the moment to get it approved here, signed into law by the governor, and I hope to begin protecting the rights and freedoms of the people of Oklahoma against Sharia and the civilization jihadists who are intent on insinuating it here.
What we do all the time with the legislation is preemptive. We don't wait for a problem and then do something about it. It's prudent to recognize that there are problems that could be coming down the pike and do something to alleviate those problems before they happen. And that's one thing that this bill is doing. But as Mr. Gaffney has said, this is a very real problem that is in our nation and in our states, and we need to be aware of it. And there's a lot of education that needs to take place on this issue, and hopefully that's one of the purposes of having Mr. Gaffney out here. It's one of the purposes for this Counterterrorism Caucus, and we have a lot of educating to do, and we're going to set out doing that.